Hey folks, I'm Brown Bear. Today I'm going to discuss a small wishlist item I have for the upcoming Souls game, Elden Ring. This video contains spoilers for every title already released in the Soulsborne series, including Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, Bloodborne, and Sekiro. This video does not contain any spoilers for Elden Ring itself. As always, these videos are quite slow. More rapid-paced viewers may prefer to watch at 1.25x or 1.5x speed. I've been playing the Souls series on and off for the past 8 years. I started off with Dark Souls 2 and I fell in love almost immediately. I went on to play every game in the series many times, even opting to get a platinum in Bloodborne. If I could wave a magic wand and receive a new entry in any of the franchises I actively follow, Souls would be near the top of the list. But over the years, with each new entry in the franchise, I've started to better appreciate the development philosophy of the original games. Demon Souls and Dark Souls feature a number of gameplay ideas that were incrementally smoothed out by later titles. I feel that while the series has become more modernized, it's also become less trusting of its audience. The developers seem to assume a lower bar for the maturity of their players than they did in the past. Let me use parrying as one example. Parrying is a very strong mechanic in both Demon Souls and Dark Souls. A player with sufficient skill can leverage the parrying mechanic to steamroll a wide variety of enemies. One infamous example of this is Lord Gwyn, a fairly challenging boss when fought straight up, but quite easy if you just parry him. Now it's worth noting that even in the context of a difficult game like Dark Souls, parrying is hard to do perfectly and comes with significant risks. Nonetheless, I think it's fair to say that parrying is an abusable mechanic that trivializes things that probably weren't intended to be trivial. The developers presumably figured this out too, because parrying was rebalanced in later games. Dark Souls 2 switched parrying from a reactive to a more predictive mechanic, while Dark Souls 3 varied it more across different item types in addition to making it more difficult and less powerful. In each case, the mechanic was either made weaker compared to the original games, more difficult to execute, or both. This might sound perfectly reasonable. Parrying was rebalanced to be more in line with other combat mechanics. I certainly don't have any issue with rebalancing it for PvP specifically. But personally, I really didn't like how this changed the single-player experience. For me, parrying is a feel-good mechanic. It feels extremely good to hit the parry timing, in part because it's so powerful. Anytime I play Dark Souls, I parry as many enemies as I can because it's so much fun. I recall in one particular playthrough, I was going through Stonefang 1 in Demon Souls, and I decided to mess around with the Crushing Battle Axe. Epic Name Bro, a content creator within the Souls community, once had a video series entitled Crushing Battle Chat. I remember nailing a particularly difficult parry and shouting that exact phrase as I riposted an enemy off a ledge. Rebalancing the parrying mechanic might make perfect sense on paper, but experientially I think it's a net negative. Just because something is broken, it doesn't mean that it makes the game less fun. To me, this is something of a maturity shift in the design of these games. Instead of offering players meaningful choices as to how they want to proceed, including whether or not they want to abuse something that's arguably broken, the developers just take away the choice for fear of players choosing wrong. I've personally never abused things like magic or the giant's armor because I don't find them fun, but I'm enough of an adult to see them as options and simply set them aside. I don't need the developers to step in and hold my hand. It's similar to the way Dark Souls allows you to enter the graveyard right from the beginning, or Demon Souls allows you to enter the Valley of Defilement right from the very start. Later games, by contrast, force you into the correct starting area. The developers somehow don't trust the audience the way they used to. Take the Great Hollow as another example. The Great Hollow is a large, complex area filled with unique enemies and unique environmental design. It contains an important piece of lore in the form of the last remaining everlasting dragon, and it's also the finishing point of an important side quest. To put it simply, the Great Hollow is an important part of Dark Souls, and one that every player should strive to see if they get a chance. The problem with the Great Hollow is that it's difficult to find organically. Players need to traverse not one, but 2 illusory walls just to find it. This makes it one of the game's best kept secrets, and it requires a lot of searching and scavenging to actually find your way in. More recent Souls games have tuned down this sort of complex world design. All areas are straightforwardly discoverable by most players, even relatively hidden areas like the castle at Bergenworth and Archdragon Peak. The idea that Smoldering Lake is considered a hidden area because you have to turn around to find it says more about the game's audience than it does about anything else. This to me is part of a larger trend of pandering on the part of the developers. Game designers put everything out in the open, but then give the impression of hidden content by adding convoluted unlockables that you essentially have to look up on the internet. The moon presence in Bloodborne and Sekiro's return ending are both good examples of content that players have little chance of organically discovering, because the sequence of steps is too complicated. Players who follow a guide to unlock these things get an artificial sense that they found something hidden, even though they never got the actual experience of searching for and discovering it. The beauty of the Great Hollow is that once you find it, you realize it's been there all along. Observant players will notice it in the background of the Tomb of the Giants, and the trunk of the tree itself is visible from various different parts of the world. As soon as you get inside, you can't believe you missed it all along. It feels to me like the developers have lost trust that the audience is here for the experience of playing these games instead of the end result. The thought that you can genuinely just find things anywhere is a tantalizing feeling to have. In Dark Souls, even seemingly trivial things like item placements or the clothing that NPCs wear have hidden meanings that you only realize if you pay close attention. This makes the game extremely engaging because you always feel like if you look a little more closely, you'll discover something really cool. One of the reasons Dark Souls 3 and Sekiro in particular didn't hook me as deeply as the original games was the realization that I was just traversing a straight line world without any real secrets to offer. This is a shift in level design philosophy, and again it speaks to the lack of faith the developers have in their audience. In both Demon Souls and Dark Souls, levels are designed to be tightly interconnected. You're constantly finding paths back and forth between areas that you've already visited. I recall on my first playthrough of Dark Souls spending hours just wandering around Blighttown and constantly discovering that I'd accidentally arrived where I had just been. Whenever I discovered a new shortcut, I always thought to myself, this is so cool. I never saw any of these shortcuts coming. The elevator ride down from the parish and the ride up from New Londo both blew my mind. I still remember when I kicked down the ladder after the Taurus demon, and I couldn't believe that I was right back where I started. The point here is the journey. The destination is almost irrelevant, because it's literally where you've already been. Bloodborne continued this philosophy to a certain extent, but Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, and Sekiro all strayed significantly from this approach. Sekiro in particular shocked me with its straight-line world design. I get that it's consistently showing you cooler and cooler environments, but I personally never felt like I got to appreciate them. I just sort of flew by. Dark Souls combined its many shortcuts with a stingy bonfire system that made players really feel the experience of walking from one area to the next. Sekiro simply places lanterns everywhere. At times I felt like it's just a string of individual levels instead of a single coherent world. I feel like later Souls games lost faith that the audience would stay engaged in the absence of a constant barrage of new visuals. That if a player needs to walk more than 30 seconds to get to where they need to go, the game is somehow unacceptably boring. Dark Souls 3 takes you from visual to visual to visual, and what's amazing to me is that it's all so forgettable. Spending hours putzing around the Undead Burg is so much more meaningful and memorable than a string of flashy levels. I miss the charm of the earlier Souls games. I feel like they reflect a time when the developers assumed a higher level of maturity from their players. They could put in convoluted side quests like Rhea and Petrus, and just trust that you would appreciate the complexity instead of getting frustrated by it. They could design levels in an interconnected way, and just trust that you'd find that interesting, not expect a brand new visual just to stay engaged. They could put in a broken mechanic, and just trust that you wouldn't use it if it was ruining your experience. I think the most underappreciated aspect of the Soulsborne series is that it treats its audience like adults. That unifying characteristic is a big part of why I consider it one single series of video games, regardless of small differences in design and gameplay. I still love these games because they do in large part still stick to this core idea, even if each new entry in the franchise seems to slip further and further away. My small request is that Elden Ring starts to reverse that trend. Alrighty, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love if you followed me on Twitter and Facebook, subscribed to me here on YouTube, and checked out my live streams on Twitch. The relevant links are in the description below. All the best, and see you next time.